Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, today, instead of a video this afternoon, we're going to begin with a story. And I've asked Virginia to help me with the story. The title of it is Lesson from Geese. Oh. As each goose flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the birds that follow by flying in V formation. The whole flock adds 71% greater range than if each bird flew alone.
People who share a common sense of direction and community can get where they are going quicker and easier because they are traveling on the thrust of one another.
When a goose falls out of formation, it suddenly feels the drag and resistance of flying alone. It quickly moves back into formation to take advantage of the lifting power of the bird immediately in front of it.
If we have as much sense as a goose, we stay in formation with those headed where we want to go. We are willing to accept their help and give our help to others.
When the lead goose tires, it rotates back into the formation and another goose flies to that point position.
It pays to take turns doing the hard task and sharing leadership as well. As with geese, people are interdependent on each other's skills, capabilities, and unique arrangement of gifts, talents, or resources.
The geese flying in formation honk to encourage those up front and keep up their speed.
We need to make sure our honking is encouraging. In groups where there is encouragement, the productivity is much greater. The power of encouragement to stand by one's heart or core values and encourage the heart and core of others is the quality of honking we seek.
When a goose gets sick, wounded, or shot down, two geese drop out of formation and follow it down to help it and protect it. They stay until it dies or can fly again. Then they launch out with another formation or catch up with the flock.
If we have as much sense as the geese, we will stand by each other in difficult times, as well as when we are strong.
You can see the obvious reason why I selected this. And I had selected this long before I heard the table reading today from your rule. It was quite interesting, Catherine, to hear those thoughts that you shared today from the reading. Is this part of a book you're reading constantly, or did it just happen that you chose this?
annually we review the rule of Benedict.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, we will be praying it at midday prayer as well.
Oh, good.
Something.
Oh, good, 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 good. So it just is one of those serendipitous moments when
Yeah.
things do come together. As we begin this afternoon, obviously we're going to be talking about community. But I want to say, as an SSND, we claim community is our foremost apostolate. Our foremost apostolate. And as apostolic, it doesn't mean just in one house. It means wherever we are, wherever we tend to be. Interestingly, right before I came in here, I had a call from one of my sisters concerned about a sister who lives in my building who had a stroke this past week. And as I walked past the reception desk, Jan greeted me and told me of her connection with SSND because she volunteered for many years at our Teresa Living Center in St. Paul. So you see those, and you don't even have to look for connections with community when that becomes a value. Now, I share this knowing that all of you have lived community almost as long as I have, if not longer. So I just invite us to listen to some of what the rule says. This is from chapter 33 of your rule. Let all things be common to all. Let all things be common to all. What does that mean for you as you think about community on retreat? One of the things I just want to say, even your silence is a support to community. It's support to one another. It encourages each of you to do the best of what you can with listening to God. Listening with the ears of your heart to one another, even during this time. We know that this teaching of community is also part of the broader Benedictine values of humility, simplicity, and mutual dependence. I was struck during the midday prayer, what you read, Karen, today about everyone has an assigned rank, and sometimes those ranks shift for various reasons. I'd never thought of community that way. It was beautiful and inspiring. Because if we really do commit to community, we commit to those changing places and retain our rank in a sense. Now, I say that out of my own context. I've been in 12 different communities over my almost 60 years of religious life. And in that, I have lived 12 different communities with 13 different ministries, each one unique. And why could I do that? Because each community supported something new for me. Probably the most meaningful community that I was in was when I was in leadership for our province. It was from 2003 to 2009. There were 4 of us. And we were at this point of trying to decide, do we join with other 3 provinces in the Midwest, or do we retain our own sense of who we are? But you know what held us together as a leadership team? We prayed together. We had spiritual direction together. And we did counseling together as a group. We met weekly. When we had all been in different ministries and different ways of interacting within SSND, it was a stretch, but it was a confirmation. And now in 2025, we celebrate our friendships and our continued care for each other because we knew the changes that needed to happen in our own story. So I share that because I think that's the gift of community, is that we can help each other to grow, to heal, to be open to new ventures. to use our gifts as God alone knows those gifts to be, and as we're trying to discover them all the time. I know a little bit about some of your stories, but I don't know a lot about your stories. So I encourage you to think about what has been the gift of community for you. I know some of you are in leadership or are currently in leadership. What was that time like? Because it can be kind of isolating too, I'll tell you, because you hold a different place. It's part of that ranking situation that you read about in the rule this morning. What is it for you that held you and gave you place to grow and to change while you were in that place? And then how did you step back into the ranks after leadership was over? You know, sometimes the sister who's been in leadership found it easy to step back. Community did not forget you used to be one of those leaders. And anytime you speak, your voice is heard differently from others. Those are some of the issues that happen in leadership in community from a leadership position. And as I say that, I'm going to share something that's very personal to me. I was elected to be on our general council in Rome. I was working with our general superior, who was an American from Iowa, that spent most of her life in Africa as a missionary. We had a sister from Slovenia, a sister from Kenya, a sister from Brazil, and a sister from Canada, and little old me in the midst of this. The piece that I learned, it was a 6-year term, but after 3 years, I knew God was not calling me to stay there. And I had to resign because my gifts were not being used at all. For whatever reason, it was a struggle for the 6 of us to work together. I share that because sometimes we think it's easy for leaders to be in leadership and that community always happens. It's not the case. It's not the case. So as I think about this, holding all in common, for us, we always say our mission is the strongest. Our commitment to Jesus is the strongest. But by God, human frailty, human issues get in the way sometimes of living that mission. For me, it was the best gift I could give the congregation to resign. Think about that. For me, I knew it was a saving grace to resign. But for the community, it opened up our eyes to what is community for us as an international congregation when we're really in 27 countries in the world still today, and we're all connected under one rule. We all profess you are called, you are sent, which is our rule. So I share that because it's not just about community living or communal living. It's about how we hold that mission of Jesus carefully, tenderly, with discernment, and sometimes with asking for forgiveness or saying, I can't, or you make it difficult for me to live my call, or I know I make it difficult for you to live your call. It's the place where I believe healing, forgiveness, compassion can be the name of the game. Think about the most, I'm going to use the word successful, probably the most inspired is a better word, time in your ministry. It was because of the support of little c or big C. Little c, the house you're living with, or the big C, the bigger sense of congregation or church. Yeah. And those times when it was difficult is when the challenges of living with a diversity of ideas and struggles ends up being that which guides our lives. So I'm going back to the rule again, chapter 33. Let all things be common to all influences a lot of social movements today, not just within congregations, but within the Catholic community too. We know of intentional communities and cooperative living. Some of our young people are teaching us how to move away from the struggles of our age. They teach us that to share is a gift. You don't have to have it all. And in our day and age as Americans, it's really a huge challenge, and it is exactly the message we need to hear. The second principle is economic justice and wealth redistribution. How do we as religious congregations share that value of ours? One of the pieces in my ministry is Land Justice Futures work, started by a group of nuns and nuns. You heard of that group?
Mm-hmm.
A group of lay committed young women who don't feel like they fit anywhere. Well, some of them took this whole idea of returning land and values to our indigenous people. There are 20 congregations of women who are now part of Land Justice Futures. SSND is in our second year. It's a 2-year commitment. And we are looking at ways in which, as we sell property or as we gain new properties, what we can do to invite our indigenous folks back to the land. Dakota are our people in this part of the world. And it's out of that sense of returning to them what was so horribly taken from them during the whole settlement time in our history. Now, does that fit Catholic social principles? Yeah, I think so, pretty steadily. But it's difficult because we don't know their story. We don't know where they fit into the whole thing. And as we learn more about what the doctrine of discovery did to everyone, but especially the indigenous peoples around the world, we're learning that to be community in the sense of sharing the wealth of everything is to return. Maybe not the land, because it's been so developed. Actually, all of Minneapolis and St. Paul was part of the native Indian Dakota territory. We couldn't return it all. But what can we do is to honor their principles, their values, their spirituality. That's what community does. These women who started Land Justice Futures understood that about religious, that community is the foundation of it all. The next principle is environmental stewardship and sustainability. And I know you at this monastery have done what you can to preserve the land and what you have given to the park here. You have had some real careful divesting of things. What do you say? How do you say that, Linda? With the new monastery?
Oh, we built smarter, not smaller.
Not smaller, right? You built smarter, not smaller. Because you could have stayed in the other monastery, which I was more familiar with because I had done a number of programs, attended a number of programs there. But when we as religious start thinking about our mission, we can build smarter. That's part of that stewardship and sustainability. And then what the land has done for you, the beauty that surrounds you. I went for a walk this morning and was touched by the beauty that surrounds you here. Not only in the house, but around. That is God's gift here. And that's part of community, the community of all life that you're contributing to as well. And the last one is faith-based social justice initiatives. I have received a number of emails today on what Catholics are willing to do to respond to the murder of our legislator. We cannot be silent. If we really trust and support the whole community of life and the community of this state, we have got to do what we can to get rid of the rancor, the hatred, the violence, which some people have given their lives. So that may feel a stretch from what you thought I was going to talk about of community. But I use that goose story on purpose because it's finding that rhythm of back and forth and in between, taking our place and stepping back and assisting those who are ill. It's all those concepts are really basic to community at every level. Perfecting Caritas during World War II, right? During Vatican Council II, on the decree for the renewal of religious life, has significantly shared Benedictine values. Were you aware of that? Those documents went back to the founding that Benedict placed in your hearts in the years 600 and thereafter. You and we and all other religious congregations were encouraged to return to our foundational principles and adapt to modern realities. That's the gift the church has been to us. I shared a little bit of this story with Linda and Michael on Saturday, saying, when many of us joined before Vatican II, we learned the rules. We learned what it meant to be a religious. We fit in. Our formation was more about that than changing our hearts to be outward and to be really sharing of our values. Vatican II said, wait a minute, let's go back and let's look. What did your founders have in mind when they set this all up? As was read today, the Cenobitic life was set up to support one another and not to live in isolation, which is what the Desert Fathers had opted to do before that. And consecrated virgins did as well in the early days. But it was an individual thing. When you bring it into a community structure, the changes are unbelievable that can happen to us personally, communally, and as church. Pope Francis knew that value with his synodal process of getting everybody at the same table to talk. They were round tables where a cardinal was sitting next to a lay person talking, and nobody had priority at those tables during the synod meetings. That's what I think the gift of Benedict has been, because it wasn't just who the superiors were, but all of you are brought into discernment when there are decisions to be made, correct? Yeah. Value that. Think about what that looks like today for you. There is a huge renewal, I think, going on within all congregations, but especially the monastic identity, which is different from my identity as an apostolic religious. It's more about what's deepening in your commitment and as a witness to the world of prayer, of reflection, of contemplation, of stability, and communal living. Do not take that for granted. It is a huge gift to all of us and to the church. That's part of the renewal. I think what you have offered here through the Spirituality Center too has shared that charism broadly. And I know Benedict wanted that from the very beginning, to share your spirituality. We might think it's not what the world needs, but the more I listen to talks and pay attention to what people are hungering for, is that learning how to basically stand with our values. The other thing, which I think is as important today, is to have greater engagement with the world. You do not live in a bubble here in your monastery. You are aware of what's going on in the world. And I encourage you to think about here in Minnesota, how are you responding personally or as a community to the deaths of our legislature? How are you responding? What are you asking of the state to do? Because we value life so much and we despise hatred and anger and revenge. I think that's a question all of us as Christians, as Catholics, who have social principles to live by. That's that outreach that's being talked about there. The next one, and you can all relate to this too, more flexibility in monastic practices. How has that shown itself? How have you adjusted to live differently with each other than when you first entered the community? That's just a question for you. It's always a trick. How do you do this while maintaining your core values? How do you do that? So that it doesn't become, well, this individual really has this yen for life. This individual has this yen and doesn't connect with the core values. That's always the discernment that each individual and you as a monastery need to pay attention to. And lastly, the emphasis on the universal call to holiness, honoring the call that every person has. Every committed Christian has that call to holiness. Vatican II reinforced that monastic life is not isolated, but contributes to the spiritual growth of the church. That's clearly written in some of the research that I have done to prepare for this. So, where do you get your inspiration? Yes, Benedict. Yes, there are others too. I often think of Joan Chittister and her writings, which has gotten her into deep struggle and deep condemnation by some bishops who won't even allow her to preach in their diocese. But what is she teaching? Your core values. Really. And you might have small prophets in your midst, as we call it in our congregation, everyday prophets. You have them right here. And who are they and what are they sharing? I'm going to give you some quotations from scripture that might be important as you pray these days. Acts 2, 42 to 47. You know this one well. It's the radical shared life that the early communities knew they needed to do to share all in common, to take care of the widow and the orphan, to practice prayer together. So that's one. Another one is Romans 12, verses 4 to 5. Embracing the unique gifts of every member of the community. Not seeing them as a challenge or as saying, oh my, whew, what's she off to now? But it's really living those commitments. Yeah. And honoring those gifts. It's affirming everyone's role and contribution. You can teach us all that a little better. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10. It's the unity and purpose of the same mind. Doesn't mean uniformity, but it's a focus on something outside ourselves. The gospel is one, the mission, your spirit. Those are the things that are indisputable and indispensable.
Out of the frozen section, just put them in the oven, in for 20 minutes, whenever they come out.
I know. Weather warning.
Yeah, I thought that's what it was.
Yeah, it was a weather warning.
Yeah, the sky is not friendly.
Yeah, there could be hail.
Yeah.
So they're warning us. So I apologize for the warning.
It's paying attention to the signs of the times.
Yeah.
The next one is Galatians 6, verse 2. Bearing burdens together. This one you know well when you care for each other. And as you pray the sushi pay, as the sister passes, we have the practice of singing the Marian anthem at the door when sisters are being taken out of our convent home now in Shakopee. And the laity are now joining us in that circle when we know the sister is being taken. It's those communal practices that really take on meaning and emphasis. You know, it might seem to some as, oh, those are things of the past. No, they're things of today. It's honoring the life. And the last one, Colossians 3, verses 12 to 14. Clothing ourselves in love. So, as you move into this evening and the rest of today, I invite you to think of these questions. What concepts that I presented here ring true for you personally? And then to ask, what rings true for you as a monastic community? Another one, where is your struggle? Because that could be your place of growth. Entree, if you can name what you struggle with. And then to ask Creator Spirit, creating God, saving Jesus, to say, what grace do you ask for today? At this time in retreat, at this particular day in your life. I have lots more to say about the blocks to community, but I bet you your list will be more true. As you would share what you've experienced, what you struggle with, what you name as real issues. So I invite you to name those as well. And what's your part in keeping those blocks solid rather than slowly breaking them up? I can name just a few words, and that's where I'll stop for today. Individualism versus interdependence. Fear of vulnerability and wearing everything on your sleeve. Lack of deep listening or busyness and distraction. The things that aren't that important. Or unresolved conflict. Unresolved conflict. This is probably one of the hardest things to grasp for leadership today, because that is their role, to be the peacemakers, right? To find deep peace in the hearts of the community. So what's unresolved in the life of this monastery? Might give you something to think about and talk about. And the last one is exclusion or cliquishness. I can share with this one, but she doesn't fit my style. I can't talk with her. It might be uncomfortable even just to name some of those. But we can't talk about the gifts of community without talking about those things that make community impossible. The church knows it, the government knows it, the world knows it, and by God, in our small little communities, we know it. So I encourage you to ask for the grace to be a reconciling, healing presence in your community. Amen.